Now, a trans woman who has been a member of the Women's Institute for nearly a decade is being forced to leave because the organisation has decided it can no longer offer trans women membership. The WI will restrict membership to only those born female from next year because, of course, of the Supreme Court ruling which defines a woman as biologically female.
Well, the human rights organisation Sex Matters argues that the court's decision simply has to be honoured. Well, we're joined now by Rowena Purdy. Morning, Rowena.
Morning.
Who says that she accepts the Women's Institute simply has to follow the law, but she wants the government to revisit the ruling so that medically transitioned trans women like her can continue attending WI meetings and sessions and so forth. This is a very interesting point that you make here, and I've not heard someone in your position say this before, so I'd like to explore it. You basically say that, in your opinion, there are some men who are not proper trans women. In a sense, they're sort of muddying the waters in this discussion. What do you mean?
Well, because I look at this in as a personal way, because I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Women's Institute, let's get that straight away.
No.
And we all know that there are men that go around and put dresses on and call themselves women and think that they may now be trans women, but they're not. To be a trans woman, you've got an awful lot of medical things to go through, not necessarily very comfortable. And on my behalf, I'm now fully transformed, fully transitioned, and so I go to WI. And I've been a member now for 10 years or so. And my local group are quite happy with me, in fact, to the extent that they don't want me to go in April. But of course, the WI says I have to go. And I think the waters are very muddied by people who literally do put a dress on and then try and get into women's spaces, if you like.
Yes.
And I think that's wrong.
Is that not what the Supreme Court was trying to establish?
Yes, it obviously was, but there were no transgender spokespeople at the actual hearing to stand up and say, hey, hang on a minute, you know, people like me have gone through all the medical side of life and now, you know, living quite comfortably, quite happily, probably very happily, as a full woman.
What's been the emotional or perhaps psychological impact on you as a trans woman of this ban, of being told after all these years of happily going along to the WI, being happily accepted by them and living your life as a fully transitioned woman? What psychological impact is it to be told, actually, no, sorry, you don't count anymore?
Upsetting, in a word. And on a personal level, I live on my own. I'm now, you know, well and truly retired, trying to find things to do. So my monthly meeting with the WI a mile down the road gets me out socially. So there's a social aspect to being a member of the WI. And I find that I am, because I'm accepted, I'm just another member. And so suddenly this news that came through that said, next April, sorry, you can't be a full member. I got quite upset. I didn't get annoyed or cross or anything like that because...
You can see the legal side of it.
Yes, I can see the legal side of it. And I mean, the sort of the safe spots for women and the athletics and sport, I can see the side of that says if you're a man, you can't, even if you're wearing a skirt or a bikini or whatever, you can't possibly be a woman.
You've made it clear that you've had all the operations, multiple, and you are, in that sense, fully transitioned. What would you say to somebody watching who would say, not in a hostile way, but simply as a matter of an observation, that you still have the male chromosomes and therefore you are still a man?
That is a very, very difficult point because biologically everybody says there are two chromosomes, an XX and an XY.
Yeah.
Actually, biologically, naturally speaking, if you start looking deeply into it, there are a lot more than just the two chromosomes. So, in a way, yes, I can see that you're either XX or you're an XY, and I can't remember which is male and which is female. I don't really mind. But there's been a lot of research in America especially which is definitely decided there's something called an SRY chromosome, which is almost like intersex, where you're neither one nor the other, or in some ways you could possibly be both.
What will you do in April when the Women's Institute says, you know, you were born biological man, therefore you're no longer eligible for Women's Institute membership?
I think that, in a way, I mean, the WI is now saying they're looking at a sisterhood, so that if you're not a full member of the WI, you can sort of be an associate-type member, as I see it.
So you will still be able to have access to the community?
I think that depends on the actual group. My lot said, we had a meeting on Wednesday when it was all announced, and they all looked at me and went, "What do you mean you can't come anymore?" You know, so they've looked at it in a different way and said, "Well, we always have visitors. You can come along as a visitor." It's not the same. But
because it doesn't validate you as a woman.
It doesn't, no.
No. Just briefly before we say goodbye to you, you're a former RAF pilot.
Air electronics officer.
OK.
I was not a pilot.
OK, sorry, I was
You served with the RAF.
Yes.
You were in the RAF, yes. And you retired a long time ago. How long have you been living your life as a woman?
Since fully transitioning, probably about 10 years.
10 years.
So it's 10, 12, because there's a period before you go through the medical where you have to live as a woman, even though you haven't started the pathway.
But you felt it from an early age?
Yes.
And you couldn't declare that while you were serving with the RAF?
Absolutely not, no. I mean, now you can. I mean, and I'm a member of Fighting with Pride, which is the LGBT charity for those of us that had to serve hidden. Well, I was lucky. I did all my service and I went into the reserves, and I hid it from my wife. But I mean, you know, lots of people didn't. But yes, I mean, this was a problem because I knew but couldn't say anything.
Are you still married?
I am still married, but we don't live together.
Interesting. Fascinating talking to you, Rowena. Thank you very much indeed. A spokesperson for the Women's Institute says it deeply regrets the decision, saying we had no other choice. And as Rowena said, it will create new sisterhood groups for trans women.